Today I am going to talk about my 650 horse rebuild kit from Power Driven Diesel. I rebuilt this transmission myself. I'm going to discuss whether or not that was a good idea. I'll show you some of the issues I've had and some of the things to be careful for. And anyways, let's get at her. If you're not following this channel, I will tell you that I'm doing a full frame-off restoration on this truck right now. I'm getting close to the point where I will be starting to put it back together, hopefully in the next month or so, but you know, I'm going over every aspect of this truck, and the amount of money that's gone into it is shocking. Okay, well, here's the transmission. This is a 47RE out of my 1996 Dodge Ram 3500. I actually got this truck really cheap because this transmission had a broken second gear band, and I could have got one of those slip-in bands and tried to do that, but I knew I was going to be jumping into you know, fairly big power with a set of compound turbos and a bunch of upgrades. So I decided to just sort of jump in and rebuild it. If you're thinking about, you know, cranking up the power, you really need to be considering how are you going to deal with the transmission situation. If you have a manual transmission, you know, different can of worms altogether. You can probably just put a clutch in there and be fine up to, you know, a pretty good amount of horsepower. But anyways, I'm going to be talking about this automatic today. In terms of the general rebuild process, I bought an ATSG manual. I followed it very carefully. Still, there were a few questions that came up, and I had to talk to Power Driven Diesel about that. They have a great tech line. You can call and ask questions about this kind of stuff when you get products from them. Very helpful, and can't say enough about that side of things. In terms of the actual kit, a ton of nice quality billet parts that go inside here. Everything went together quite well, and I got most of the additional upgrades. I bought a, this is a, I think it's a DPC torque converter rated for 1200 horsepower, which I have no intention of going that high on this truck. It's a triple disc. I also got a valve body from them with a few additional upgrades, like you can go into lockup in any gear and you can shift up or down in lockup. And then I got a big tranny pan from them. This is a big cast one, and it holds an additional 4 quarts or 6, I can't remember, something like that, but a lot more capacity. And then I got a SFI flex plate. First of all, I will say that through no fault of this kit, but just due to this being an old truck and, you know, whatever else, I've probably gone through about $1,000 in ATF so far on this project. When I first put it back together, the lines that go into the transmission heat exchanger, which is mounted on the side of the block, the original fittings blew out on me, and it was just ATF everywhere in my shop after I started up, and I thought I fixed it, and then it blew out again. So I got some fittings that went in there, and that was fine for a while. And then the actual fitted, like the pressed piece that goes, I think it's to the inlet, it's the one on the back of the heat exchanger, that one just blew apart while I was driving down the road. So there's, you know, $50 hose and a couple $100 in ATF. I have a BD extrude tranny cooler, so there's quite a bit in the system, and it's got a deeper pan. So I mean, we're probably looking at least 15 liters of ATF in there. So I put a new fitted hose in there. It's got like crimped ends on it and stuff, and drove it around for a while. And I was just driving down the highway one day, and it completely blew out again. You know, left me in a very, you know, difficult spot on the highway in busy traffic. I had to wait there for 4 or 5 hours on a hot summer day to get a tow, and you know, and then obviously, you know, a couple $100 or $300 to get towed home, you know, so that was an issue. And then I had another time where one of the lines that I had replaced going into the heat exchanger, it didn't hold, or I can't remember the exact thing. I think I didn't tighten the hose clamp enough or something, but again, that blew out on me. And you know, every time you do it and it drains the system, I mean, it's expensive. As I'm going through and rebuilding this truck and putting it back together, I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to all of the lines in the tranny system, because This has screwed up and let me down so many times, you would just not believe it. So I'm going to be redoing that. Also, another issue that I've had is with the tranny dipstick. It's been actually a pretty persistent leak. It was leaking really bad after I first did it, and I pulled it out and put a new O-ring in there, and it worked fine for probably about a year or so, and then just completely started leaking again. So I'm going to be looking into some different methods. I think there's a boot that you can put in there. That is something that I definitely need to also resolve. I've really had a hard time keeping the ATF in this system. So if you're planning on doing something like this, one of the biggest things you really need to think about up front is getting the transmission out of the truck. So mine's a four-wheel drive. I'm pretty sure I took the transfer case off on the truck, but either way, you know, the tranny and transfer case together could easily be probably close to 300 pounds, somewhere in there. So I had this. This is like one of those ones that you put on a jack and then lift it. And if you had a couple of guys, obviously there's chains that go around it too, but if you had a couple of guys, maybe this would work, but by myself, this proved to be quite troublesome. So as I mentioned, I'm doing a frame-off restoration on this truck right now. So when I put the drivetrain in and when I took it out this time, I had the cab off, so I just kind of lifted it up with a crane. But doing it from the bottom is actually quite challenging. So if I had to do it again, in Canada we have Princess Auto, which is the same as Harbor Freight, or very similar idea, and they have a transmission jack that's like a wider based thing, and that would be what I would get. It's pretty affordable. You could probably buy it, use it, and sell it on Craigslist or whatever, but if I had to do this again, I wouldn't even consider it without getting one of those. This on a floor jack was an absolute nightmare. Having all that weight up there on something that's not that wide was actually quite a challenge to deal with. That would probably be my biggest warning, is make sure that you have the ability to lower things down safely. Okay, so speaking of having a tough time keeping ATF in the system, I would almost put a lot of that just down to bad luck. You know, I haven't really been that hard on this truck. I mean, I'll post a link in the description of just a video I have of some random driving shots where I was kind of out horsing around in it. And that is, you know, pretty much as bad as it's been. I've never towed with it. I've never done any drag racing, anything like that. But a couple of days after I rebuilt the transmission, I had a couple things happen which caused me months of work, and it was really frustrating and just horrible bad luck. But I was driving around about 2 days after I rebuilt the transmission, and then I also I did a bunch of motor work. I put the compound turbos on, put head studs in, new head gasket, new cam, a whole bunch of things like that, and some pump work too. And I was zooming around having a blast, thinking, wow, this is the funnest vehicle I've driven. And all of a sudden I was on my way home one day after 2 days of enjoying this, and simultaneously the head gasket blew, and I think the reason that caused it was this thing here. So I'm pretty sure this is called the stator support shaft. This lives on the oil pump in the transmission, and the input shaft, I believe, goes through that. This thing is supposed to be a solid piece, but as you can see, this has become sort of de-welded or delaminated or whatever, and that happening caused the truck to stay in lockup. So I was coming to a stop sign, and all of a sudden it was like being in a standard truck and coming to a stop without putting in the clutch. It started kind of lurching forward, and I, you know, had to just stomp on it, and I kind of cut this car off, and there's just clouds of black smoke everywhere. And so I pulled into my driveway, noticed there was some steam coming up from underneath the hood, and I looked at the dipstick, and it was just milkshake in there. So, you know, brand new head gasket with head studs, and 2 days later, you know, it let go on me. So that was really frustrating. I pulled the head and kind of realized that the mating surfaces weren't that great. So I decided to just pull the whole motor out, stripped it down to a bare block, sent it into a machine shop, Got the block decked and honed, and I got the surface, or the head surfaced and O-ringed. New head gasket, new bearings, everything like that. Put it all back together, and that lurching issue was still there. Now, I had thought that because the head gasket blew that it was just choking with fuel or something and it was struggling to run, but you know, that was not the case. So I also had the transmission stuck in lockup. And the reason that that happened was because of this thing here becoming detached, and it blocks an oil hole, I think, or something like that. Maybe you can see right here, but there's like an access or a hole where fluid would go through. So when this is properly lined up and welded in place, you know, it would let the pressure release. You know, again, not really a problem with the kit. It was just kind of bad luck. And you know, when you're taking an old 25-year-old truck that was, you know, 160 horsepower at the engine, and, you know, at the wheels, I don't even know what that would be, 120 or something, or less maybe. And, you know, cranking it up to 600 plus at the wheels, I mean, there's going to be some stuff that comes up. Bad luck aside, now I'm going to talk into some of the day-to-day issues that have actually continued on and are still quite challenging to deal with. So when I first got this truck, as I said, it had a broken second gear band. Other than that, the transmission functioned perfectly. It was a real challenge getting from first to third, especially if you're going up a hill. But overdrive worked seamlessly, lockup worked seamlessly, you know, everything else shifted and functioned completely normally. You know, if you were manually downshifting with the shifter, everything worked as it ought to. And there's actually still been a few issues in that area that I'm going to need to figure out. I've actually gone in, I think, at least 2 or 3 times just to confirm that the front and rear bands are adjusted properly. And there's a couple of things. I don't know if they're electronic issues, but they just have come up and been a real bastard to deal with. So a lot of times in cold weather, it won't go into first gear. So I have to drive it along in second a little bit. And then if I put it in first, it just locks up almost like there's a trans brake and it won't move. And then if I idle it and just drive it for a very short distance, put it in neutral, turn it off, start it, everything's fine. So I have no idea what that is from, but that's something I will be trying to get to the bottom of. If I had to guess, I would say it's electronic, but I have no idea. Another issue is sometimes if I'm driving along and I'm in third gear and I try to manually downshift to second, it won't go unless it's below a certain speed. However, when I turn off the overdrive switch, it will let me do a manual downshift to second anytime I want. So again, you know, I have to assume that's some sort of electronic thing. And then recently, actually when I first put it together, the lockup actually didn't even work. For a long time, it just never worked when I was driving it. And so I went through, I made a video a while ago where I did new battery cables and I was talking about that, and went through and checked all the grounds and all the usual stuff. I got that apps noise isolator. I tried putting one of those on, didn't help. And it ended up being, I found an open circuit in the output speed sensor, and then the throttle position sensor was bad. So I put both of those new ones in, replaced some wiring, and everything was great. Probably about 6 months later, the problem started where lockup was very intermittent, and then it just stopped working altogether. So that was kind of one of the last straws when I decided to just strip this truck down to a bare frame and go through everything. It's got a lot of electrical gremlins, and again, I can't blame this on the kit. Possibly when I was rebuilding it, the wires just got jostled, and maybe it was on the verge of going anyways, I don't know, but that was something that was a big issue, and that's something that I'm going to have to address in the coming couple of months as I go through the electrical system on this truck. So when I ordered the kit, I also bought the new 8-pin connector, and it's got like a pigtail of wires coming off it, so I'll be redoing the wires to this, and I hope that that solves all of my issues. I also, another issue that I've had, transmission related, which isn't really, I don't think I can blame this on the kit, but my truck is a 96, and I think possibly that's the one that has the PCM that you have to get sent in and reflashed for the manual overdrive switch. I have tried a few different methods. There's one where you pull the relay out under the hood and you put like a jumper between them, and then you ground out another wire, and there's another one where you get a 3-position switch where you can have it off. You can have it normal where the computer decides lockup, and you can have it where it's enforced lockup. And I've tried and horsed around with this so many times, and it will work 3 or 4 times, and then it'll just stay in lockup, and I have to put it in neutral, turn the truck off, start it up, and start the whole process again. So that might be, I know some of these trucks you need to get the PCM sent in, but that is another transmission-y sort of issue that I need to get resolved. So anyways, that's about all I got with this. I'm trying to not keep this too long. I know it's boring to sit here talking about a transmission, but this thing has definitely kept me on my toes. In terms of the quality of the kit, 0 complaints. The customer service, when you call and ask for help, Power Driven Diesel is pretty renowned for that, so definitely an A+ there. The overall process of it wasn't bad, but the side issues that have arisen have been shocking. Possibly my truck just was terribly unlucky, or the wiring was just so much worse than the normal truck, but that definitely was a big factor. And obviously you could buy this kit and just have a shop install it. Anyways, I just figured I'd put this video out there and let people get an idea of my general thoughts on it and some of the issues that have popped up. In the last video, or the last few videos, I just rebuilt my transfer case and painted it. So now I'm going to be cleaning this up and painting it to match, and pretty soon I'm going to be getting this truck back together. Anyways, just wanted to put this out there. Hope you all have a good day. Thanks for watching. Take care.